Okay, so welcome back to the Sika podcast. Uh, Today's one is going to be slightly different, and it's going to be in podcast form, and it's going to be on YouTube. We The original plan today was going to talk about warm up protocols, the importance of warm up, different things you need to take into account when you're training in different environments. But um, we're going to do something very different instead. We think people might want a bit of a break and a bit of a change from the monotony, especially if you're caught in like COVID craziness. So today we've been asked a load of times to do a rerun or kind of an overview of a rally we did 2 years ago. Like, yeah, 2.5 years ago. We drove from our home in Cork over to Mongolia in a Nissan Micra, and we drove back to Cork again. Uh,
An 18-year-old Nissan
yeah,
Micra, by the way.
yeah, 2000. It was 00, wasn't it? So a Nissan Micra from the year 2000, 4-door, 1.2 litre beast of a car. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to have a chat about the rally. We're going to look at some pictures. So if you're listening to this and we're referring to pictures, you can go and check this out on the Kyrgyzstan YouTube. But we're basically going to talk through it. We're going to talk through what the best parts were. We're going to talk through if you and a few of your buddies want to do something like this, what you should be looking out for, and tell a few stories as well. So, Garth, do you want to kick off with the kind of genesis?
Oh, also like pre-rally. Okay, so what happened was it was the universe telling me, I'm not joking you, this was like just fate, right? So I was sitting at work at my desk, and I remember one of my friends was just brought up the Mongol rally, and I'd vaguely heard something about it, and he was like, yeah, oh, his brother did it, and he was, or something similar to Mongol rally. I think they just, yeah, it was a charity rally to Mongolia or something. So I was like, well, I didn't know the Mongol rally or the League of Adventurers did their one or whatever, but I'd heard of people doing it, and I was like, geez, I'd love to do something like that. And then, honest to God, 2 weeks later, you and Todd was the third member. Okay, Todd is you can see on my screen here, I think. Which screen is sharing? Can you see? What are you seeing now? Oh, yeah, perfect. So Todd is the third member of our party, and Fitz and Todd, unbeknownst to me, had decided they were going to do this, and they were looking for a third member. And I remember thinking, after I said that to your man, I was like, I'd love to do that. That'd be just unbelievable. I was like, I couldn't imagine. I was like, who would do it with me though? And I'm not joking. You 3 weeks later, you and Todd were like, we're doing the rally, and I was just in my head. I was like, I think after like 5 minutes, I was like, all right, I'll do it with you. I have to. I was like, there's just no way. I was like, I was figuring out everything. I was like, doesn't matter. I'll figure it out. It has to happen. So that was like Christmas, or just Christmas late 2017, and you and Tad had decided you were doing it, and I had started everything on work or whatever.
Yeah, the funny thing is like myself and Todd. So Todd had a red Micra that we used to drive to school in, like the exact same car, except his was a 2-door instead of a 4-door. So since we were like 17, the Mongol rally had been a thing in our heads that we kept saying like, okay, we'll have to do this at some stage. So then it just came like I was selling the gym, I was finishing my undergrad. Garth, I don't know how you managed to get 5 weeks holidays from Lily, but you managed it. Toddy was finishing a degree. So it was like this aligning of planets. And when the two of us were looking for somebody, we were like, Jesus, you're going to stay in a car with them for 7 weeks. You can't just willy-nilly send in a text to a group chat and be like, lads, who wants to come? You know, it has to be very well thought out. And I think the three of us worked very well for different reasons. But the team dynamic worked quite well. So that level, or that kind of organization and getting people, like, you'd never met before, had you?
No, I'd never met Todd. I'd never met Todd before this. I remember, like, I think we just started talking about ZMA, about doing something. I remember we were
it was that September.
I remember that it was still kind of warm, and I remember you said you were looking to do something, so you told the gym and you wanted to do something else, and I was like, I was thinking about doing something, you know. And then we started that, and we were still kind of, Seek Strength wasn't the thing yet. Well, the genesis of Seek Strength was, and then it was just basically, long story short, it was decided that we were going to do it, and we were figure out logistics later. So Todd was basically the person who did all the logistics in terms of
Yeah.
what dates, when we were leaving, where we were going. Like, Todd just loves doing that stuff, and me and Fitz don't. Long story short, so we got our visas anyway. So the visas took a lot of hassle. You had to go to like the Iranian visa in Dublin, send off our passports.
Yeah, the Russian embassy in Dublin. We had to go up there twice or three times maybe, and then a company in the UK. So this is like one of the tips basically. If you're looking at doing something like this, there are companies who'll do like your batch of visas for you. So we sent our passports away for a month or two, and they'll go around to all the London based embassies and get your visa sorted rather than you having to go to them individually.
Nothing is more harrowing than posting your passport away to random people in embassies.
Yeah.
So,
and that's just the start of it, because you end up having to hand your passport over to incredibly corrupt people who are looking for bribes from you, and you're trying to get either in or out of your country.
So this is speeding up. So this is I think this is just when you're leaving. So basically, I couldn't get enough holidays from work, right? So this is early July. We had the micro ready. Remember, Fitz collected me from the gym one day after training. You like just got it that day, went for a spin in it. The excitement, lads, I'm telling you, from months beforehand, I was literally just vibrating for months, just thinking about the absolute mayhem. So this is just 2 or 3 days before launch.
I had also gotten my head shaved for charity to raise. We did it for charity for the lifeboats in Crosshaven.
So there's Fitz, particularly Jack there. I suppose it's a head shaved. The two boys shaved their head before. I didn't, because no way. So I remember.
You're afraid your hair wouldn't come back.
We were like, I was like going to meet you in Romania in Budapest, or Bucharest, not Budapest. This is the problem. And you were like, we were joking like, haha, you'll end up in Hungary waiting for me instead of Romania. But at the same time, I was like, no, they could end up in Romania or in Hungary waiting for me and not Romania.
Yeah.
So this is about to launch off, right? And setting up the car. We had literally clothes. I gave you my bags of clothes. We had any sort of survival kit you could possibly need. Half a spare micro in the car.
Well, what we did, like, we bought a spare micro. So we bought a spare car, dismantled it here at my house, and then it was like taped onto the inside of panels. It was strapped to the underneath of seats, like spare shocks, spare coil pack, spare alternator, spare water pump, absolutely everything, a spare sump, like everything possible that you could need from the car was strapped inside the
So luckily,
car.
Myself and Fitz would be reasonably handy with cars. Like, mildly, we'd be like, but my brother is a mechanic or whatever, and my father is incredibly handy. So we made the roof rack, and my brother gave the car a once over and serviced it. Thank God he did.
Yeah, thank God.
The brakes.
We also didn't have any brakes.
No, it's just like drum brakes, like, and they were nearly, unbeknownst to us, obviously, they were on the borderline of just not working anymore. Like, mile 1 out of 50,000 miles or whatever. Like,
yeah.
So he drove along to UK, got across the Channel to France. Whatever, just Europe was fairly uneventful, I suppose. He just camped beside the road, 8 cans of Spam by the sounds of things. I was like,
drank a lot of cans as well.
And so I was flying to Bucharest to meet the boyos, and they were collecting me in the airport. And I remember landing in the airport, right? And just the absolute mayhem of Bucharest airport. It was just like, there was whatever particular time of day, it was incredibly busy. And I was like, I hope the lads are here. No reception. He'd no reception. It wasn't that hard to find you once the airport's pretty small. And I remember just the mayhem of that airport, and I was like, this is it. I was like, my body is ready. And so you were like, he collected me or whatever, and you had to get the token. We were in the multi-story car park, and just people like honking, shouting at each other. They were going on between two people.
Do you remember that?
And then the car park attendant, the fellow working there, came over, and so we were like, oh, he's going to stop them fighting. He got into one of their cars and drove off and stole their car, and then everyone just started chasing him, and it was just so fucking funny. So this is us filling up in Romania. So plowed onto Romania, went through Bulgaria. The fucking unbelievably pretty countryside in Bulgaria, just absolutely obnoxiously pretty.
the thing, one thing we might have skipped over is like, probably one of the best things about the rally in terms of like what the company, the adventurous, organise for you is the launch party. And so like this is one of the things because Gerf couldn't get holidays, he kind of missed out on. But what the launch party basically is, it's in what's the name of that city? Prague. So it's in an amazing city for like a huge party, and then you get 300 odd people who are about to drive around the world in tiny cars. So you get a fairly mental, eclectic group of people
of all ages, by the way,
of all ages, yeah,
that's very important,
and of all clans as well. So you have people who are really into cars. Then you have like the kind of gap year, really posh English people who are just
never driven a car before,
looking for an experience. Yeah, and then you have like whatever class we fell into.
The sheer naivety of some people was just
great, like showing up with one spare tire and a van that they bought somewhere,
aluminium alloys.
Yeah. So like the launch party is, there's a post-apocalyptic community outside the city of Prague. It's on like 100-acre piece of wild ground, and it's basically this commune of people that go there at the weekends, and they have like their holiday weeks there, and they live there in tribes, and they've built up this like Mad Max post-apocalyptic world. So the adventurous buy this place off them for 2 days, set up a crazy, like, it's like Alice in Wonderland on acid launch party. Like, it is absolutely mental. It's in an old army base, so there's like missile silos where they have raves. They fly in Mongolian mud wrestlers. Like, it's highly worth it just for that party. Like, one of our friends flew over for the party because we knew Gerf wasn't going to be there. So that is one thing I would say is like, you pay a small entry fee, but it's well worth it for that.
And so during that, I've been updated, but like a recurring theme of this trip, right, is Todd was the first victim of diarrhea. Or was it you, Phil? Who was it you or Todd?
No, I got it really bad in Europe.
Yeah,
and it was like, it was from eating spam, and it was from eating like freeze dried meals that I wouldn't leave deep, like fucking refrost or whatever, because I'm putting boiling water in them. We'd be driving all day because getting like Europe is very boring. So we just drive across like all day long, and then we go on the piss every night, and then keep driving. But I'd obviously be shitting my brains out from loads of free dried food, and like just trying to fucking beat off hangovers all day long.
And so the lads made it to Bucharest on time, collected me in Romania, and then the mayhem began. I'm gonna have to be careful with the audio on some of these. So this, right? So went through Bulgaria.
Jesus, make sure the audio is not on.
I'll have to turn off the audio on some of these. One of the coolest parts of the rally, right? And if you can see it on your screen here, by the way, the phone I had at the time was like a Samsung A20, so I've come up a lot in years in quality of cameras, right? But this is the Mediterranean Sea, and then is it the Caspian Sea or the Black Sea that meets in the middle? So this is the kind of the land bridge where driving into Istanbul, right? So this is one of the coolest moments. I remember driving down here. This was so much fun. So we're driving into Istanbul, one of the coolest cities I've ever been in as well. Just so fucking cool.
Yeah. And this is really at like getting slapped in the face by, like, you know, it's one of these moments where you just like, what the fuck are we doing? We're literally driving to the bridge. Like, it's a bridge into another world,
another
like
continent. It's the separation. So Istanbul, at least they drive in their own lanes in Istanbul. One of the things Turkish drivers do, and it's a theme throughout the rest of the world, is as soon as the light goes green, you immediately beep at someone. There's no point giving them that 0.5 of a second. Oh, so here, right, this is in Istanbul, walking around. We got to finding our Airbnb was near impossible. By the way, we'd no Google Maps or anything. We'd no data, no Wi-Fi. So we drove through like loads of random side streets in Turkey. Loads of people have been like, Istanbul's really dangerous, be really careful, you know. And we were like, yeah, whatever. So then we eventually we found it just by sheer accident, and we get up to this Airbnb, and your man is like a suite of apartments. He's running a hotel as an Airbnb, like, you know. And
And that's why it was so. Remember, it was so hard to find because we kept walking past, being like, "No, no, this is just an apartment block." But in fact, it was just they'd taken a few apartments and like made hotel rooms in them.
So the receptionist is there with some like lackeys hanging on in the background chewing on like macadamia nuts or something, and he gets one of those like cartoon maps of Istanbul, and it was three lads, so he made some assumptions, and he wasn't far off, to be honest. But he looks at us, and he's like, so he's like, down here. He had a lisp as well. He was like, down here you can get anything. Or sorry, he's like, down here restaurants, you know, cool tourist shops or whatever. But he was like, up here you can get anything. But it was the lisp, and he kept saying anything, and we were like, oh yeah, yeah. He was like, down here, you know, restaurants. But he kept saying it. He was like, anything up here. He was like, anything you want. And we were like,
this divide he's talking about is in Istanbul. There's the old city, which is kind of where we were staying, which is all the old mosques. There's like the old markets. There's pretty nice restaurants. But then in the new part, it's like fucking Vegas in the Middle East.
yeah.
So he like that's when he's like, you can get anything, and we're like, no, we think we'll just go to sleep and get some food.
And he's like, anything. So then we got this random, looked really nice place, just some random hotel with a restaurant at the front on the street. And I will say one of my skills is to not overreact and just like, I can ignore anybody I want. And it became so handy over the course of the rally, because in reaching over as we got our food, for want of a better word, a young street urchin, I'd say he couldn't have been more than 9 or 10, started pulling at my sleeve while I was eating. But I just kept eating, to be honest. I was just like, he was dressed in like fresh clothes and stuff. Like it was clearly a scam. Like just before anyone thinks I was ignoring a beggar, like or like a homeless person. Like
yeah, I don't know what the story was, but he was
he was
persistent.
Yeah, he was very persistent. Like, and in this like obviously a different culture for us. Like, but the usher came over, the maitre d' or whatever came over and like backhanded him. Like not hard, but just once or twice. He like caught a fistful of we were like, holy shit, like fucking. That's the only memory of that restaurant. So then we just went to a rooftop bar and got some
hookah.
What is it? Hookah, yeah. Oh, so there's this sign here. It's called "You Fuck Baby." So it's obviously for kids and obviously means something in Turkish. Yeah.
You'd hope so.
I fucking hope so.
That was like the old market in Istanbul. It was just closed the day we were there because it was their Sabbath or whatever.
So this is actually a very good so this is just Istanbul again, right? So we stayed in Istanbul for 1 or 2 nights. We messaged some gyms and they were like, oh yeah, you can definitely come train, but we didn't have a lot of time. But so if you see the dash here, right, we cut this dash out to make more leg room because is Todd 6 foot plus as well, or even, or
he's about the same as me, like just over 6'1".
Like we're not all 5'9.5" in the car, like so. So to make leg room, we opened it up. However, this was a bit of a disaster because the hot engineer was blowing into us, and it got much hotter after Istanbul. So we're just driving around Istanbul here, driving for basically all the way across Istanbul. Yeah. I'll see if I'll display these away in the background. So, drove through Istanbul. Anything sticking out in your mind about Istanbul?
No, like probably the next big thing after that then was the border crossing into Iran. And that was our first big border crossing. Like the Turkish border, you'd stop. We were there for maybe 2 hours or an hour. They were searching cars, they were looking through things, and we were like, oh shit, this border is pretty mental, you know, because up until that it had all been European borders we were going through. But then you get down to the kind of tail end of Turkey, and what you're like, the border between Turkey and Iran at this time is so from the British consulate, it's closed is what they're saying. It's like a travel advisory not to go there. But we're like, fuck it, we actually save a good load of time if we can just cross that border into Iran. So we kind of made a decision.
So the Iran-Turkey border was closed, wasn't it? Or officially? And so
officially closed. So we just made the decision we try it.
But we couldn't go to the Turkey-Armenia border either, right? Because there had been skirmishes and they'd killed people or something, or like there'd been skirmishes in the army, you know? So we were just like, so you go like Armenia, Georgia, because I think the Iran-Armenia border was closed as well or something. So like, we were just like, it's a gamble either way, so we'll just chance the border.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we did. our kind of tactic was getting to the borders late, when there wouldn't be as many people there. So I think it was around like probably midnight when we were pulling up to that Turkey-Iran border. The last 20 minutes, and all right, so the night before we obviously pulled into a beach, and that's the pictures you're seeing now. But the night before,
by the way,
pulled into a
Turkey
beach, yeah, Turkey's gorgeous.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Yeah, so we camped the night before with the like sole aim of getting rid of all of our alcohol, because having one of our main sponsors as Stonewell Cider for the rally, and then having accumulated large amounts of alcohol over the few weeks up until this point, we had a bit of drink left in the car, so we had an almighty session on the beach in Turkey, and then we went for the border the next day.
Oh, hang on. Here's Fitz singing.
What's this?
Probably Hammered.
No, we don't need to listen to this.
It's too late. Yeah, so
yeah, but that border was probably like, it's one of the more memorable border crossings. So for the last half an hour as you're approaching Iran, there's Garth with no top on.
There's Todd. There's Fitz. Shout out to Nolan's powerlifting.
Yeah.
So yeah,
anyway, as you're
wait, hang on now. Sorry, step back a minute now, because Istanbul nearly killed the car going up some of these mountains in the heat. So
it actually did, yeah.
It nearly overheated. Like, just this tunnel, I remember this one nearly killed the car. Like, genuinely, I'll see if this will play. It should play in a second. But like, so obviously micros aren't meant for an average of 40-degree heat or whatever. Like, we're barely making it up this hill. I have no idea what elevation above sea level we are. And
this micro isn't standard either, like, Joe. It's been tweaked a little bit. Like, it's been opened up. It's a straight pipe exhaust with no catalytic converter. It's faster than your normal micro. But it's still, like, they're incredibly steep hills. It actually has a way bigger air intake than a normal micro too. So if you think the air intake for a normal micro is probably like the diameter of the top of a Gatorade bottle, the air intake for this was probably an A4 page wide, like. So the car was well able, but these hills and mountains were absolutely crazy.
It genuinely nearly killed the car. Sometimes, like, we really were.
You're talking about first and second gear,
and like the speed locals drive was criminal. Like, absolutely. It, like, you know, when you're in other countries, you're never really driving, you know. And so this is a good time to mention, Fitz is deathly allergic to bee stings.
Wasp stings.
Wasp stings.
Yeah.
So we there was this team where, like, if you saw a wasp in the car, we had to get out, because obviously Fitz's EpiPen was out of date or something, and we weren't going to take him to mini hospital. But here's just a random. So we had to, if there was a wasp, like, you had to, like, vacate the car until it got out, and there was those wasps everywhere because it was a late summer. But here we have fucking just a micro in the middle of nowhere, right? Okay, so this is the first of Iran. I wish I took more pictures. Did you take many pictures?
Yeah, I took a good few, but my camera wasn't great.
So, like Fitz is saying, anyway, we arrive up to borders late at night just so we can get you a little faster and they'd be a little bit more lenient, right? So the journey to the Iranian border was tense. Like, it really was tense, because Syria was, like, in the height of its civil war at the time, and ISIS were a big thing. Afghanistan was like 50 kilometers to the south or something to the border.
Iraq, wasn't it?
Iraq and Afghanistan were, like, very, very close.
Very close.
Armed army checkpoints every 10, 15, 20 kilometers. Like, there was police with sirens driving, like, absolutely flying down the motorway.
Just convoys just flying past you.
So, like, the Turkish people on a whole were very, very pleasant. They were very, very nice. Like, most of the people who were in the rally. But when the nearer we got to the border, it got really fucking tense. Like, people were not so friendly anymore. And we were driving. I was driving in the middle of the night on the way, obviously, to get to the Iran border, and something that looked like a hand run across the road. And I was like, "Oh my god, I'm hallucinating," because, like, I didn't know if he saw it, but both of you saw it as well. But basically, what we'd driven over was a wind scorpion or a camel spider, like, just Oh my god. And then Fitz said the thing I knew he would say, and he was like, it's probably on the bottom of the car now. And I was
It looked like from the Addams Family, you know, that hand that walks around the house.
harrowing.
Yeah.
So we get to the Iranian border, make sure there's no drink in the car. Big searchlights, huge walls, like all searchlights alongside the mountains and hills. We're like, fuck, this is going to be really serious. Get to the Turkish side, and your man is like, we're sitting in the car, you can't see us. And your man Todd was like, do you want to see the lads? And your man was like, nah, stamps and passports.
He was also like, oh, we're not sure if they'll let you in.
And you can't come back though. But we couldn't come back.
The fucking story, so.
But like, if you go through the Turkish border, like obviously you get stamped out, and so you're in like no man's land or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you've no visa, you can't get back to the country. So we were like, we have to get through, you know. So then we got into Iran side, and basically we just had to stay there all night because someone else had to come in the morning. Was it?
So yeah, when we arrived, because it's not really a manned border or whatever, they just had a few people there, and we were trying to get in, and we were told that you'd have to pay some stuff at the borders, which is fairly standard. And we were obviously kind of shitting ourselves. So we went in. We were talking to a few people who didn't speak English, and they were just like, "Oh, you're just going to have to sleep here." And then they just told us to sleep in like the search lane. So we just pulled up the car, went to sleep in the car. There's like packs of wild dogs. Remember that, girl?
No, I missed them.
Roaming
I was sound
around.
asleep. I didn't see them.
Oh my god, they were just packs of like things that looked like Alsatian
Bear killing
crossbreeds.
wild dogs.
Yeah, and then sure enough, like 6:30 a.m. the next morning, someone knocks on our windows. It's like the guy who runs the border crossing.
Bobby the
puts us
Boxer.
in charge with these two. Bobby the Boxer was his name. He puts us in contact with these two like human smugglers.
They
Essentially
were
is
like,
what they were.
They were basically
just two dodgy guys. Like they were really nice. They had some English. We paid them some money. They paid Bobby the Boxer some money, and then they got us to follow them. So they hopped into a taxi and they were like, "Follow us, follow us."
No, hang on a second. Reverse back. So this Bobby the Boxer fellow, right, was this man in his 50s, and he was in immaculate shape. Hands like shovels. Hands to rival Fitz's hands, right? Clearly had been an athlete at some point in his life of some form or another, and which you could guess the way he carried himself, his posture, t-shirt tucked in, or his shirt tucked in, buckle, like just great posture, immaculate shape, vascular in that way that older men are, who've done a lot of stuff in their life. And he just for some reason just took a massive liking to Fitz, and randomly throughout the thing he just like jump Fitz and be like whoppa, like fake punch him.
Just start shadow boxing, like
because we found out anyway. We were like, some of the other security guards was nice to him there. They were like, what the fuck is the story with him? And they showed us an old picture on his phone of him back in the day. Like back in the day, it was a black and white photo now of him with a belt on, like in boxing attire, like, you know, after like with gloves and stuff on, and he'd like some belt or some cup or something. So he'd obviously been a fairly decent boxer, or some form anyway. And he just like grabbing chunks of Fitz's fat and being like, you know, like just like like this. It was so funny.
He loved it. He loved the crack.
So then these lads took us basically into the shipping lane, like all of the Arctics, all of the trucks, driving this tiny little mic around the place, and we were like, oh my god. It took us to loads around the buildings, paid 2 or 3 different people, and like honestly I'd say the lads are drunk as well by the looks of things.
Yeah, or on opium or something.
So we got through the border anyway eventually, after lots of bribes, and then Iran was just very pretty. It was also, we thought Turkish drivers were intense. We were so wrong. We'd been up for hours. Obviously Iran was of mythical proportions in our mind pre-entering, because no one we knew had ever been to Iran, and lots of people we met on the rally were like, oh no, we're not going to Iran, because any Americans and British couldn't go at the time, and probably still can't. But
I think the thing with the Brits, so Americans just weren't allowed go, I think was the thing. And then with the British guys, they had to have a guide with them at all times, and I think that was just like, that's obviously just very, very messy. Whereas everybody loves Irish people because we're incredibly non-threatening.
But on the smiley Irish face, like. So, however, you know what was very threatening was the way Iranians drive. So, like, it's on screen here, you can see this truck, right? But this could be coming around the blind turn, and there'd be a car passing out, another truck passing out this truck, and then the car would be trying to pass out both of them on the other side of the road. And Turkey were safe but aggressive. Iranians were just aggressive, just straight up unsafe and aggressive. Like Todd pulled over and was like, someone else has to drive, because we'd been up for hours and Todd had been the last to drive, you know. And like I remember Fanula rang me or whatever, and like just the sheer stress of that situation, I was like, I can't talk to you. We have to go, like, because they were just. I don't know if this video, like one night we saw 3 crashes in a row, and that was
our first evening in Iran.
Multiple fatalities. Like one was a school bus and there was a load of kids on the road. It just happened, like they had blankets over them.
So they were like, we're just driving along a road. There's probably a 15-foot drop on each side of the road. It's like through agricultural land. And there was a few cars crashed on the road, but a bus had basically turned over into the field. And they were like, as Garth was saying, they're literally dragging out bodies out of the bus.
Like we saw flipped Arctics, just like people, no regard. Here's Fitz looking like Ming the Merciless from Flash Gordon. If anyone knows who that reference is, Fitz was looking like a mere like an evil villain. Fucking weirdo. Here's me looking fabulous with my quick dry shirt. So this was looking at Tehran, the capital of Iran. What was the name of that? It was like the Heights or something, or something.
Rooftop of Tehran.
Something like that, yeah. Like Iran was just. This is one of my favorite photos I've ever taken in my life. There's a little micra. We don't have that many photos of the micra, but there it is, a little plucky micra. Just this random plateau in the middle of the desert and cheetah crossing signs. Just Iran was so cool to see, to be honest.
What I would say is it's your driving license. Iran is nothing like what we were told Iran would be like. Like you kind of hear everything before you go. You obviously hear about all the warnings, and look, they're obviously going to be heeded. Like one of the funny things about it, when we were in Tehran, the capital city, we went for a drive around, and we couldn't find, like, so they have the US embassy the same, like everything the exact same as the day they raided it, and we couldn't find it anywhere on the maps. I don't know, do you remember this, Garth? We couldn't find it anywhere on the maps, and the reason we couldn't find it was because when we were searching for it, it didn't exist. It now exists as something called the Den of Espionage. So then when we found that, and it's like all the walls are graffitied with like just burning American flags, with like really, really harsh, like,
but it's bullet holes in the wall,
violent, and like, so there's like the Empire State Building, the what's the name of the statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty is there, but like the person is a skeleton and it's like rotting away. And then like when you look in through the gates, we didn't actually go in because it was closed, but when you look in through the gates, like it's still like burnt out sections, there's smashed bits of wall, bullet holes everywhere. And then like the anti kind of British stuff is like the street the British embassy is on is called Bobby Sands Street. And for people who aren't Irish or aren't British, Bobby Sands was an Irish Republican, so an IRA member who went on hunger strike, was like fighting against the British, and I think this was very much an Iranian move, like an anti-British move, and I think that's why there is that kind of pro-Irish sentiment out there. Like there's a Dublin cafe in Tehran, the capital. So it is like the embers of those fires are very much still alive in Iran. And I think to go there without, like, to go there if you're on a kind of a different side, so if you were from the UK or if you were American going there, I would be incredibly hesitant about going there.
Iran was so much fun.
Iran as a country is absolutely amazing, yeah.
So, like, driving into Iran, I think it had been the hottest. It's definitely the hottest environment I've ever been in terms of temperature, hotter than even Qatar. So we'd been in kind of, I can't remember what the name of the place was, the desert was, but I think it got up to, it was either 49 or like nearly 50 degrees or something, and I thought Turkey nearly killed the car. It annihilated the car.
Yeah.
Like, we met these Dutch people on the rally, and we got out. I remember seeing, those bullet ants that run along the top of the desert when it's too hot. They run so fast. I remember seeing a load of those, and I was like, it was so fucking hot. Like, the car just smelt like you would not believe. And so
you're talking about late 40s.
Yeah.
Like late 40s, up around 50 degrees.
So being like, we got to Tehran that night. I've not that many pictures of Tehran, unfortunately, but we got there, and I remember going back out to the car for something. We stayed in a random hostel, and I remember looking out, and there was these like young lads on mopeds, and I was like, Jesus, if there's ever lads who want to rob the car, it's going to be them. I remember thinking that. But there's nothing like, they weren't like hardened criminals. They were just like youths, So came back inside or whatever. We went out for food, that night. Someone smashed the window in their car, and we came back out, and it was obviously the moped gang, like the gang, the biker gang, like, they robbed. Yeah. But what they ended up robbing was all of our Imodium, which is basically anti-diarrhea medication. Yeah. And we had this,
like the first aid kit was legit. Like, we were sponsored by a pharmacy in like my hometown, so we got a first aid kit that was probably around $2,500 worth of prescriptions in it, and just like open-ended prescriptions, like everything you could possibly imagine needing if one of us got fucking shot or something was inside in that. Like, we had sachets of Quick Clot, which
and like
proper trauma drugs, like.
And we had we had this giant folding table, but it was in like what you imagine Hitman would have when he's opening up his sniper rifle, like those, like
the aluminium case,
a platinum case, but it was huge, so you would assume there's something very valuable in it. And they robbed that, but it just turns out it was just a folding table, but they didn't know that, and they robbed the medical thing, and Fitz's guitar, which me and Todd were incredibly sad about. Obviously, it was so sad that Fitz's guitar was gone.
You fuckers.
And so they robbed that, and then your man was like, "Oh." Your man in the hostel could kind of see the car from the thing, and he was just like they said they had cameras and stuff, but we were just like, whatever. But anyway, the very next day, there was people like random repair shops and stuff, gave us a load of free stuff to fix the window. You can actually see in the back, it's covered in like heat reflective tinfoil. So
so it's ducting tape, that really fucking high bond ducting tape. We basically made a back window out of plastic floorboards, that ducting tape, some like sealant, and then super glue with a kicker used on it.
Just need to point out as well that Iranian people were the nicest people in any country.
Oh
ever
my
been.
God.
Just even people at the toll in motorways wouldn't take any money off us. They'd be like, no, you can just go. No weightlifting in Iran, unfortunately. We didn't get to see any cool gyms or anything.
That would have been amazing.
So next up, right, we came to a country that I knew nothing about. I was vaguely aware of its presence, called Turkmenistan. Now, any of the weightlifters will have heard of it from the World Championships in the same year, actually, I think. And so we've heard Turkmenistan is difficult to get into, and it's an odd culture, but we didn't realize it was a totalitarian state. Basically, like, there was a tyrant running it. And so all forms of internet are blocked there. Like, you can't, WhatsApp is blocked, Facebook, Instagram, anything like any is all blocked. So we get up, we find this kind of random border in Iran, between Iran and Turkmenistan. So a lot of people actually choose to skip Iran or whatever before the aforementioned reasons, but we were going through it. So we get up to the kind of the only border I think that's open between Iran and Turkmenistan, and So begins the gauntlet of paying the most amount of bribes you could ever possibly imagine. So we get up to the first security guard, and he's like, my name is Owen Connor Murphy or whatever, and I'll leave this on the screen. So he's like, oh, Conor McGregor, and you're like, yeah, whatever. And then so he's like, oh yeah, you have to pay this fee to get in. So you're like, right, we know the shtick, like, so you're paying a fee to get into the country, you're paying for your whatever. So we had our visa or whatever, or note to get a visa from the embassy in the country, and we pay this fella. Then he sends us into this other office there, and only American dollars as well, by the way. All they want, their currency is completely useless. We found out later. So they're like, your one's like, oh, so she gave us as a receipt and it says like $100 on it, and she types into a calculator $250 or something like that. And Todd, in fairness to him, would argue with anybody over money just for the sake of saving money.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to argue with her, and she was just like, if you argue with people, you don't get in, like. So we pay her that. So then the car has to go through a load of checks or whatever, and they take the car away, and we have to walk through. But Todd was technically the owner of the car because he was on the tax book, and so they take Todd away separately, and he has to meet like. He takes him into this room with this young fella trying to take a bribe from him, and Todd just flat out said no. It's like, I'm not paying you. And then he said the young fella kept asking, and he was just like, no, I'm not doing that. Then he took him to a doctor, and the doctor was like asking for bribes to make sure. So like I think it said on papers that you had to have like a vaccine for something. I can't remember what it was, or you couldn't get into the country.
Yeah.
And Todd was like, no, I'm not paying you. And then a third person tried eventually, and then Todd was just like, I'm not paying any of you. And like Todd came over and came back to us, and he was just fuming, absolutely raging, like just red with rage and sweat and anger, like. And so they
the doctor had a full set of gold teeth.
Just like sheer like corruption, bribery was just unbelievable, like. And then eventually we get through the border, and we're just like, we meet this lone Iranian staggering back to Iran, absolutely hammered. And so like Turkmenistan border, like by the way as well, right, they put a GPS in our car, so it's plugged into the cigarette lighter, you know. So there's like a GPS with us at all times, and Ashgabat is the capital of Turkmenistan, so it's just like, it wasn't that far from the border with Iran, so it was only like half an hour drive or something like that. And we'd been warned about the border before we got there, but we were raw after it, right? And so we get into Ashgabat, and it's all this like marble, perfectly clean. All the locals are perfectly clean, and we're like covered in grime and sweat from like 50-degree heat in Iran. And we just go look for some food. Nothing is as it seems. It's like a fucking, what you call it? It's like something out of like Stepford Wives or something. It's just, it's all a facade. And so we had a load of American dollars sitting around the car, and so we get to this like burrito stand or whatever, like, and kebab stand, and your man, we had the currency rate or whatever, and he told us how much, you know, and so we gave it to, we gave him like a $20 American note or something. And he looks at this, and his eyes just twinkle. He's like, they light up. So it should have been something like €12 for whatever we got, right? Say. So he runs off. He was like, I just have to get more change because I don't have enough change for you. So he comes back, and he gives us like $100 worth of their currency, and I can't for life remember. I have no idea what it's called. So he gives us that, right? So we don't read it at the time. We just take the cash or whatever, and we're like, fine. So only after then, when we're like, look, counting up our money, we're like, oh, that man gave us, he gave us way too much, like we fleeced him, you know, and or we like, he gave us the wrong change, he totally messed up, Joe, we better go back and give it to him. But we couldn't find him again or whatever, because we'd give him we bought like $12 worth of stuff, and he gave us back like $100 worth of change from their currency, a wedge of cash. And we were like, what? So then we went looking for petrol, right, in this entire capital city, everyone's driving cars. We eventually found a petrol station, and you can only get so much petrol. We couldn't fill up our jerry cans, and so we're like looking around, trying to find a hotel to stay in. Find this massive, and I mean, there must have been 1,000 rooms in this hotel. Like, it was just 7 or 8 stories, enormous, the size of the Titanic. And we go in, and your one is like, oh no, we're all full up, and there's nobody there. There's nobody in the car park. There's nobody in the hotel. And she's like, no, we're full up, sorry. And we were like, what the fuck is going on? And then we're driving around for ages, you know, and we start seeing this like Chevrolet Escalade or whatever, basically shadowing us for ages. And it turns out it was like secret police, like you could see, but they were just following us around anywhere we drive. Like, we drove out in this ring road around the capital that's totally empty as well, by the way. And they're like
8 lanes each side.
Yeah, like,
huge tarmac.
Nobody's driving, and there's like, he's like, there's this like Chevrolet like just following us, big blacked out windows, like secret police basically, just following us everywhere we go. And so eventually we got petrol, And then we drive up to the airport because we needed cash really bad, you know, because we wanted to get some conversion because we thought American, you know, they're not going to take American dollars. And so we get up to the kiosk, and there's this woman there. She's very good English, very nice local, and she's like, we were like, can we get some money changed? And she just looks at us and was like, she kind of looks around, and then she leans in really close, and she's like, oh, our money's no good. She was like, she's like, well, I don't have any American dollars. Or she's like,
our country's in a lot of trouble.
She was like, yeah. She was like, don't take any. She was basically kind of like, you fucking idiots. You not do any research before you came here, you know. And then she was like, don't take any. She was like, we've nothing. Our currency's collapsed, basically. Like, don't take it, you know. So then, by the way, as well, remember going into the airport? We took off our boots and stuff because you had to put them through the thing. And I'm not like, the smell was unfortunate for all involved, and the security guards were like literally like. They turned away from us. It was so fucking funny.
If ever there was a time you wanted to smuggle something into an airport, they're like perfectly white marble, brand new airport that nobody goes into because there's no flights out of there. It's just like this facade, and they're going through the metal detectors. Like, you have to take the boots off. And we're like, all right, buddy, but it's your loss.
Oh, so then right, we get a hotel. And we're sitting out the back in the beer garden drinking like some kind of lager or something for like fucking some kind of beer for 20 cents a pint or something stupid. Really nice, eating food or whatever. And then at like 10 o'clock they're like, all right lads, you gotta go. And we met some other people from the rally, like, so they're like, you gotta go inside, you know, there's another bar if you want to go inside. So there's like a karaoke bar, and we go in, right, and
obviously we nailed the karaoke.
So, yeah, we nailed the karaoke. So your man still serving us pints. There was two plain hookers obviously outside the beer garden, and no one had any interest in them, to say the least, right?
Jesus Christ.
And before we went in, Fitz was just like, I guarantee you the only two people in here is going to be those two hookers. And it was the two of them. And then so we sit down, and they're like, you have to play karaoke if you want to be in here. So we're like, grand, whatever. There's Fitzy. This fucking bucko, right, was our best friend for the whole night. And so we assumed, you know, that it was like going to be still like 50 cents for a fucking pint, you know. And then we get the bill at the end of the night, and it was like €50 to use the karaoke, and it went up to like €10 a pint or something. And it was just, my God. No one,
he just got fleeced.
Absolute douchebag. So then, we were actually so annoyed we didn't go to the gates of hell. We were just like, fuck this country. We were like, they've absolutely fleeced us. It was just
the gates of hell, like, for anyone who doesn't know, is basically the only thing in Turkmenistan that people go to see. And it's this giant hole in the ground. So in the 80s, I think it was, they discovered that there was oil there, and they were kind of digging down to mine it, and an explosion happened. So it's now this big flaming hole, and it's been burning ever since. And that's a very good reflection of what Turkmenistan is like as a country. It's just a giant flaming hole of shit. Like, when we went to get out of there, so we basically just hightailed it out of there. We woke up early the next morning, ate the weirdest breakfast in the world ever.
Oh my God.
And then we just hightailed it for the border. So I think we got out of there in around 48 hours. We arrived at the Uzbek border. Absolutely grand. We just had to pay a few bribes again to get out of the country. We arrive, like, so you drive through the no man's land, which seems to be very, very common with all of the border crossings, is that you'll get checked out. They'll do their searches when you're leaving. Then you drive like a few miles through like bombed out no man's land, and then you come to the next border crossing. And we arrived at the Uzbek border, so straight away everybody's around a foot taller. They're all in so much better condition, so like nobody's malnourished anymore. And it's just these like three fucking 30-year-old army guys, all of them like perfectly cleaned guns. They're all wearing those, like, you know, the early 2000s sunglasses that are like the wraparounds, but they're slightly too thin. So it's just like full wraparound glasses, and they were like, how you like Turkmenistan, like half laughing, half serious. We were just like, oh my God, it was terrible.
they started laughing. They obviously like, so Uzbekistan's a little bit more. They have their own dictator, but it's a little bit more freedom orientated.
Turkmenistan or Uzbekistan's very nice.
So this is just some random time Uzbekistan. Wait, that's fucking video here.
Uzbekistan was like one of the places where we ended up having one of the most incidental cool meetings of the entire trip.
No, that was Kazakhstan.
Where you trained with Miso.
Oh, sorry. I thought you talked about the. Oh yeah, we'll get to the other one in a minute. Oh yes.
So we went to like the main capital city in Uzbekistan, and so to give you some more background around other things that were happening at the same time, we'd originally planned to go from Turkmenistan to Uzbekistan, which we did. Then we were going to be going to Tajikistan, and from Tajikistan into Kyrgyzstan. But the day we were due to cross over that border, 2 days before we were due to cross in, there was an ISIS terror attack, where a guy basically drove over a group of cyclists who were like on the same road we'd be going on. He drove over them and then stopped the car and went back and stabbed them to make sure they had all died. So obviously, when we arrived in Uzbekistan, we were like, "Oh, we won't do that."
Well, actually, no. So we found out. So we'd obviously no internet in Turkmenistan, so we got into Uzbekistan, and our phones were just lighting up with like messages from concerned family members and friends being like, "You're not going to Tajikistan, are you?" And we were like, "Oh yes,
yeah, we're going tomorrow."
And then Todd still wanted to go. We were like, "Look, we've done some necklace things in this, right? But we're not going to Tajikistan or whatever." So shout out to Gregor, right? So I messaged Gregor and I was like, "Any chance you know of anywhere to train in Uzbekistan?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, you can definitely go there." He was like, "By the way though, Misa Asano is training there, so you might unfortunately run into him, aka like you might look like shit if you're not been training for the last 4 weeks." So
this is Gregor from All Things Gym as well, by the way.
So it was my turn to get the dose of the shits. Basically, I had gotten a severe dose of diarrhea, but luckily in Uzbekistan we were staying for once in hotels, so normally we're just camping inside the road and stuff. And I lost like 4 or 5 kilos in 2 days. But obviously when you're training with like a junior world champion Olympian when he's like 17, you're going to make some effort. So we are in the training hall on the Friday evening. The fellas were so nice. They were unbelievably, were lovely people. Yeah. They were like, yeah, no problem. You can train Gregor, set it up for us. I could barely snatch the barbell. I just had to sit down and cry. Fitz did a little bit of just messing around just in this cool little gym here in the basement in their national federation. And I could barely stand up, like from fluid loss, food loss, fucking any kind of loss you can think of. Every mineral in my body was gone. And so we come back the next day and I'm able to do a little bit more. And then in walks fucking the Miso. Fucking Qatari fridge Miso and his father. And in the background here is this weightlifter, right? And I can't think of his name, but he's like so injured and they're just absolutely abusing him.
Yeah, we've talked about him on the podcast before.
Yeah, we won't reminisce on that. But he's like, Miso's training, whatever, get talking to him. Miso's like, "Oh, you're doing some squats tomorrow or whatever." And obviously, like, I'd lost like 5 kilos and probably a lot of muscle mass with it. So they were like, oh, they obviously knew we were weightlifters, why else would we be fucking there? But then Miso was kind of like, they were kind of talking to us. And I think at the time Miso squat was like 285. And I was like, "Oh, cool." And they were like, "What's yours?" And I was like, 290. And they were just...
The tone changed completely. They were like, "What?"
It was changed so much. Like, I was like, "You don't get this dump truck from nothing." Like, and then so it was so funny because I at the time I think it was a bit more than me. So yeah, he hadn't done 290. He hadn't done more than that yet or whatever. It was so funny because they were so nice. Obviously, they're lovely people, like, you know. And then they were just like, "Oh yeah." So then they were like, "Oh, do you want to come squat tomorrow?" And I was like, "Fuck." And so Misa was doing some squats in the morning. So obviously I was not going to turn that down. So I came back the next day with them. Self and Fitzer training. We'd one pair of Wilton shoes, Nike Romeo 3s, the shittest shoes in history. We'd frantically searched some the Uzbek pharmacy for some ace bandages so I could somehow not die. And after 4 weeks of not training, I managed to squat 225 in the back squat, which I think is probably the most impressive thing I've ever done, because considering the state I was in, shook would be an understatement, I'd say, with it fits.
Yeah, like you were turning grey. And like, I definitely wasn't in great shape. You were in terrible shape.
It would just been the worst time of the rally to be potentially absolutely annihilated.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was very cool. So there's the morning squats. I wonder if my video of the squats is here. I hope it is. But yeah, so we just a little bit of training with me. So yeah, I'm not sure why they picked Uzbekistan. Just somewhere different, I suppose.
Yeah. And the people in the Federation in Uzbekistan were really, really nice as well, you know. They were like all about us coming back to do like a camp there and stuff.
Oh yeah, I remember actually. Yeah, yeah, they were like, if you ever want to come back to do a camp with some of your lifters or anything, which was very nice of them. Like obviously you pay for it, but it would be. Oh, I don't think I got my squat unless this is it. Oh yeah, here's 225. And may or may now I haven't trained in like 4 or 5 weeks, and I've gotten diarrhea. That wasn't that bad.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, the worst shoes in the history of the world. I still have those ace bandages actually.
Yeah, I fucking lost mine.
So then Uzbekistan wasn't really dead. There wasn't much else in Uzbekistan. Was there anything else eventful?
No,
It's just
not really.
the landscape obviously is vastly different than anything
Yeah,
we would have seen before. Like a very open kind of steeps, I suppose, as in some of Uzbekistan, some mountainous stuff kind of then. So then we move on to Kyrgyzstan, and
Kyrgyzstan's absolutely amazing.
it's just all mountains. Like it's
Yeah.
just so pretty. It's unbelievably pretty. However,
Aesthetically, it's probably one of the most amazing, shocking places in the world.
this just maybe this is this is Kyrgyzstan. Yeah, I think yeah. So this is so right Kyrgyzstan. Right, we're fucking idiots. So they told us don't. You have to take the ring road around the country. But we were like, but you're the capital city,
There's a
and
road there on the map.
we can just go straight across instead of going all the way around. So we drive like for most of a day straight through the kind of diagonally through the country, and we're making great time. We were like, so this is unbelievable, seeing scenes like this, no other cars. It's like, look at this, like look,
Yeah.
amazing. We were like, we're fucking flying it. We were in the Himalayas, basically some mad fucking amount above sea level, and then we get to this. The road just stops basically in the mountains. There's just like no more road, and this old fella we met him on the way over, and he was like waving at us, really nice. We were like talking shit, whatever, and then they were like, no, you can't go that way. Like you won't. There's no more roads. You know, we met some other people further down who lived there. So we turned around and we're like, fuck's sake, we wasted a load of time. And then we come back to this old man, and he is absolutely stocious. Like he is locked, like heavy locked. By the way, right, at the same time, disaster had struck. Todd had contracted some form of just venereal disease. Like he didn't have the shits. He was just dying. Like he was near death.
He probably lost like 15 or 16 kilos in 2 or 3 days. He had gone delirious at this point, so he was taking videos of himself. This is one of those videos where he's videoing him complaining, but we're like, oh, even though I was thinking of a different video, but he's
I don't
taking
have that
videos
one here
of
yet.
himself, thinking he's talking to somebody on the phone. He's fully delirious. He can't listen to us or talk to us anymore.
Yeah.
He wants to drive the car, and he's getting really aggressive because
Really
we won't let him
aggressive.
drive the car. Yeah. Yeah, it was so funny. It was so funny to see him in a point of such weakness as well, because you'd usually never see that. Like,
we're not dramatic, but we were genuinely like, Todd, we might have to take you to a hospital because you were like So one thing that was actually it was very funny at the time, I'm not gonna lie, but he'd be talking to you and he'd be like, so Dara, and then he'd like pass out and then he'd wake up again, and like, I know we shouldn't laugh, but it was very, very fucking funny because he was getting so angry, so he'd be talking to you and he'd pass out and then he'd wake up and he'd be like, let me drive, and then he'd like pass out again.
yeah.
Me and Fitz were secretly like, we actually might have to take him to a hospital, and he was like, don't take me to a hospital. And we were like, we were genuinely like, I think it was the only time we were actually concerned for someone's life on the rally, other than the time in Russia, which we'll get to in a minute. But this is just some random gym in Kyrgyzstan, in the capital city, which the name eludes me.
Is it? Oh, what the fuck is the name of it? It's not Tashkent.
No, that was the capital of Uzbekistan.
Oh yeah.
So
Bishkek.
Bishkek, that was it. So these guys, there was like a wrestling and jiu-jitsu club just behind the corner here.
There were some fucking studs in that jiu-jitsu club.
Absolute studs. Like, yeah, they were clearly like in wrestling for a long time.
Fucking thick neck, rounded upper back, just cauliflowered ears from the age of 14.
When they'd hit manhood.
Yeah. Like, at this time as well, when we were training, the only bit of skill I have in any sort of lifting is being able to power clean 120 no matter what condition I'm in. And I just remember, I think this might have been our third time doing a training session, because in this training session I was like, I'm going to power clean 120 for a triple, because that's the only thing I was doing with training. The only progression, I was like, I'm going to power clean it for one more rep each time I do a training session.
Progression. So then we leave Kyrgyzstan and we get to the rolling steeps of Kazakhstan, like just literally hundreds of miles of countryside like this. Kazakhstan
as a country is about the size of mainland Europe, if not a bit bigger. There's 2 cities in Kazakhstan. So you've Astana and you have, what's the other one?
Astana. They both changed names now. Actually, they're called something else.
But anyway, you've a country at the bottom.
Almaty.
So you've a country at the very bottom, which we crossed into first, and then you basically drive it's like you turn Europe on its edge, and you drive the entire width of Europe. So it'd be like going from Lisbon, probably across to somewhere in Eastern Europe, up to the second city. And when you only kind of realize the vastness of the country when you cross into Almaty first, I think, or whichever one anyways down the south. When you cross in there and we're talking to people, like this, a really well developed city. It's like really modern, like first world country basically. We're training in a CrossFit gym there, and when you're speaking to the people there, we're like, oh, we're going to Astana, and they're like, you're going where? We're like, oh, we're just driving up to like your other city. They were like, nobody drives there.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't even aware there was a road there. Like, I think one person in the gym had been to that city.
And he was he'd been there, but he was like, he'd driven there once, and they were like, have you driven there before? And he was like, yeah, it took me like 2 days.
Yeah, it took him 2 days in like a fucking Toyota Amazon Land Cruiser. Like,
so this was Ireland Blackwolves CrossFit was what it was called. It was like the third story. Myself and Fitz went there. Very cool, very very nice people. One of the members of the national team, or former members of the national team, trained there, and he was like coaching weightlifting there, which is how I'd seen it. And they made a joke. They were like, you come train the national, or come train Kazakhstan team. And me and Fitz were like, ah ha ha ha, and he was just like,
no, really,
not joking. We were like, fuck that. So then this is halfway between like Almaty and Astana. I don't know from wherever we were coming from, and this pristine lake, and we were like, this is amazing. And so that night we were driving up there, and like this is in the middle of nowhere now. I think this is the farthest from any like proper city we were at any point. And we were stopped.
Oh my god.
So we get this we're driving along these like random lanes and stuff, you know, looking for somewhere to pull up for the night. And this 7 Series like or no, it's like really old 5 Series BMW like overtakes us, pulls in front of us, full of young lads drinking, and we were like, oh my god, this is definitely now we're going to get murdered. And then they pull out, and they were like, oh, they'd some a little bit English, but then a little bit not, like we're using Google Translate. So then they were like, oh, we'll show you where to camp, you know, and they take us up to this. We were like, oh, this is where they're going to murder us, obviously. And then
clearly. So
then they take us up to this place, right, and there's like a cement factory up here, and so we get up here, right, and then they're like, we'll come back later with food and drink, and we're like, please don't. But they're like, oh, we'll be back, and we're like, okay, we'll see you later. And then there's that again. I don't know what he's doing. So so this is all we have of this. I'll leave this on the screen. So they come back that night, and we've all set up our camp, and they're like, camp up here because the mosquitoes will get you down if you don't come up in the hill, you know. And they're like, don't swim in the lake. They're like, do not swim. They were like, don't go into the lake, because apparently the cement factory just poisoned the water.
Irish cement company. How fucking hilarious is that?
Yeah, they'd like taken over or something. Irish Cement had like taken over because
Yeah.
they wasn't running properly or something. So the lads come back and they're like, "Oh, we don't have enough food," and we've like cherry wine and stuff. And then they're like, "We'll go get more food." And then they're like, "Fitz, they're like, you come with us, you know." And the lads have been
I'm
drinking all
sorry,
day,
we'd
day
been
drinking
drinking
while
as well.
driving.
We were half locked. We'd been drinking for a few hours and like hanging out with them. And then they were like,
Yeah, but we weren't
no.
driving, right? So then they're like, the Fitz, they're like, "Fitz, you
Fuck's sake.
they're like, you can come with us, you know." And me and Todd were like, we were genuinely like, one of us is going to have to ring his mother when they don't come back with him and tell him what happened and explain why we didn't stop them.
Yeah,
So they take
and what
Fitz off in the
happens
car.
when they take you off in the car is like they're obviously trying to show off like the car they have. So this is like their communal car from what I could see, and we're all drunk, right? They're probably more drunk than I am, but we're all drunk, and they're driving through the desert, like on things that aren't really roads, and they're just fucking flooring it. So probably like 95, 100 miles an hour, lifting going down these tracks. A guy pulls out in front of us at one stage, and it's like end of game. Everybody stops. Everyone's out of the car, like abusing your man. Your man comes back and apologizes. Everyone back in the car again. We drive to their house, so you have to drive down like railroad tracks, and then these huge metal gates open, and you go into their house, and they have like plasma TV, but it's still like it's very, very strange. So the guy is on the phone to his mother, trying to figure out what meat to take out of the freezer. I'm being handed like random drinks and things to eat. Then we go to a shop. They get loads of stuff from the shop. There's like old people coming up to them, like shaking their hands and stuff. It turns out the people we had met were some sort of mafiosa people. So when we were leaving the shop, I was trying to pay, and your mum was just like, "Oh fuck, you don't pay. Like that's not how this works." And then they wrote their number on our car, and they were like, any trouble in Kazakhstan, you ring this number." We're like, all right. But yeah, there was some hilarious characters there.
And so that was not the end of our
No.
estranged meetings in Kazakhstan, right? So what was I doing for most of the trip? Not taking photos of anything relevant by the looks of things. So we're driving along the motorway, and we're getting, I think, whatever the northwestern city or whatever it is, and we're on the way there, and this woman, like a fucking Amazon Toyota, like
Fully blacked
Land
out.
Cruiser, with a driver, and she's sitting in the back. Like they pull over, like they drive next to us and kind of wave at us or something, and like it happened so much in the rally, you didn't take any notice. But then they're kind of beeping and stuff, and we were like, "Oh, what the fuck?" So then they speed up ahead of us, and they pull over, and they get out, and your one is waving us down, you know, or the driver's waving us down, and she's like waiting there, and we're like, "Oh, what the fuck?" So then she turns out she's some kind of journalist, or so we thought, and she's like perfect English. And she's like, "Where are you from?" or whatever, you know, and we're like, "Ireland," or whatever. Oh, and they're like, "Okay." She's like, "You'll come for dinner with me and my friends or something tonight. We'll show you like the best beef in the world or whatever, great Kazakh beef, how good it is." And we were like, "Rightio." You just don't say no to anything.
Don't say
so
no when her fucking bodyguard has pulled over your car, and she's sitting in the back of the car being like, "You will come for dinner tonight."
As we arrive up to this like very, very nice restaurant, beef kind of steakhouse, whatever, like, but it's very nice, and we put on our best dry travel gear, and at the table is this kind of Bond-esque looking man with slicked back, like long a mullet, but it's like greased back, like with fucking gel, and then this old man, he's older man, this Dutch man, and her, and we were like, what the fuck is going on in here? So it turns out the Bond-esque villain sells uranium for a living. He's a uranium dealer. Like, that's literally his job. Kazakhstan export a load of uranium apparently to the rest of the world. And this old fella is from, he's Dutch, and he's like the head of Kaz Beef. And he's
So
like,
he's a consultant basically to set up their beef industry. I think their beef industry over there is only around 8 or 10 years old, and this is the kind of guy they've brought in to kind of head it up. And that's, so he knew the woman we met. The woman we met basically had been an ambassador to Dubai for a few years, and she was now kind of this figurehead for Kaz Beef, and just no, but incredibly interesting. Like that meeting of the uranium dealer, the international agriculture consultant, and this kind of figurehead for Kazakhstan as a country, was just absolutely phenomenal. It turned out to be the Dutch guy's birthday, so we went to like the Irish bar in Kazakhstan and drank some horrendous pints of Guinness. Um, and then we were supposed to be going to meet the minister the next day. She was like, "Oh, you must meet the minister of like whatever," or was it the mayor of that city?
It was like some really high up minister, and we were like, fuck it, we have to do it.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't say no to anything really. Like, if someone tells you like you're going to do something, you're like,
Oh, this me eating a wedge of wasabi.
so this is in the middle of nowhere eating the worst sushi ever because it's 4,000 miles from any ocean. I dared Fitz to eat some wasabi. Like,
Yeah.
I just eat the whole thing of wasabi, hoping something terrible would happen. Obviously,
Yeah, my face just went on fire. But yeah, so like those those kind of interactions are the reason you do this. You know, it's like the reason you don't go on your package holiday or whatever. And I think the thing of like the rule of just saying yes to things is definitely, if you were to have a rule of thumb for the trip, it would be like say yes to these random things, because it's very easy to be like, oh no, we have to be here by a certain date, or we want to see these things that we've read about in a book. Like, if you get those opportunities, just go and do them, would be my biggest piece of advice.
so we trained in that CrossFit. Ilya was training for a bit in I can't remember the name, but they were gracious enough. Your man actually was funny. He was like, you train with Clarence, the owner of the gym, and I was like, I sure do. And he's like, let me get you the Lico bar. And then I was like, well, that was
And remember, they were like, this is the platform, this is the bar, and this is the set of plates that Ilya had done all the training on.
I was like, I'm going to miss 100 kilo snatches, so thanks, buddy. So this is so in Kazakhstan. It was just phenomenal. Like, you don't get to see that much flat ground in Ireland anywhere, so it's a sheer novelty. And the amount of dust coming in. So then, right, this is the point of the rally. So we had to go through Russia.
Yeah.
So we went through Russia. We went into Russia once, and we just kind of went around. So the first trip into Russia was very uneventful. We got to the border. Oh no, we didn't. No, it wasn't uneventful. So we got up to the border, right? And this is us sleeping in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes we just slept in the car because we were so tired.
Yeah, and certain altitudes you were at. Like, a lot of the borders out there, are very much geographical borders. So you'll have a country like Kazakhstan that's incredibly flat, rolling hillsides, and then when you get to the really steep mountains, it's usually either side of those is your border. And I think this is actually the night before we crossed into to Russia for the first time. So it's freezing cold because you're at a few thousand feet altitude. Like, there's snow on the ground, so you've gone from 40 degrees in the middle of the night a few weeks ago up to this really, really cold. And yeah, this is us going to sleep in our sleeping bags in the car. So none of us are small humans. Like, I'd say at that stage, I was probably the lightest of the three of us at 106 or 107 kilos. So that's a lot of man meat in one car.
And then we got up to the Russian border from the Kazakh side, and this bus is coming back across it. And we're just kind of sitting there waiting for our turn it's a tiny border. Like, it's literally like the middle of nowhere along. Like, no one uses this border we'd chosen. And this bus is coming back full of like kind of old people, and I assume they went shopping or something like this. And this man gets out and runs around, right? And we're just kind of sitting there watching it. Like, it's just, you're just like, what the fuck is happening? He gets out really fast, runs around, opens up the luggage compartment of the bus, and jumps in and closes it down. And we were just like, what the fuck just happened there? We're like, what is going on? And then we were like watching for ages to see if they'll find him, because obviously he's trying to smuggle back in or whatever. And obviously everybody saw, like, so the guards came over and they tapped on the thing, and everyone gets out and they're like, hey, and they're like, haha, and they're like, get in.
But also, you have like the Russian police, like at the borders, they're like fucking RoboCop. No, no, and they have like, so the first, that border, they all had Alsatians, like scent trained dogs, but they looked like attack dogs. The next one we went to, they had Springer Spaniels as their scenting dogs that they'd put, like, remember they put it into the car and everything, scenting for drugs. Yeah. But yeah, like the first time we go into Russia, you're basically just going into Russia so you don't have to go through China. Like there's a little horn of China comes up like into Kazakhstan, into Mongolia, and into Russia. So you basically go from Kazakhstan up around the top into Russia, and then we drop down into Mongolia again 48 hours later.
Do you remember those really kind of obnoxious people we met? There are other like Westerners at the Mongolia border from Russian side.
No.
They're like really judgy. Like we were just like, oh yeah, we're just here for some fun, and they were like, yeah, they were. Oh, I can't remember what they're on about. But anyway, so we get to the point of the rally. We get to Mongolia. Like it was just awe-inspiring, and obviously we were meeting a lot more people from the rally now again. So at the start of the rally, you see a load of people, and then
then you all kind of split up,
and then you kind of join back together again when you're heading back to Russia or Mongolia. So here is Mongolia, and just so fucking cool,
breathtaking.
There's our boy Rupert. We met a lot of people from the rally, obviously. Some Australians. There's no roads as well, or they were just building roads like for the first time in a long, or apparently ever, like building roads, but they were like literally being built. You couldn't use them. So this is what most of the roads were like.
Yeah.
There was like this actually there was a few roads near the cities.
And that road is probably 40 or 50 kilometers long. Like from one end to the other, and then you just run back onto your sand again. So like that, where you're looking at there, it's like sand roads. Basically, once that road gets worn away, or once the ruts get too deep for each tire, people would just drive up on the grass next to it. So you end up having these like 20 or 30 track wide roads through the valley or wherever you're going, and you're trying to find the most recent one, so it'll be the flattest.
So like we just found a random camp here. That was good fun camping with everyone actually. So we met a lot of people, 4 or 5 other cars from the rally, and we just kind of decided we'd, obviously everyone's on a different schedule, you know, and there's different kind of time points, and
everyone's
people need to get back home or whatever.
And at this point you meet a lot of people on journeys as well, like.
Yeah. Some are fun and some are not, or some are obnoxious. But anyway, some people are soul searching and some people are looking for fun, and I'll tell you which are more fun. It's not the soul searching people. So, so obviously it was just a load of lads, right, in old cars in a country where you weren't going to be arrested for. So, of course, everything turned into a huge race, right?
WRC.
But not everyone had bought off-road tires, and not everyone had grown up driving cars in the field when they were 12 years old. So if we got any kind of head start, we were in the lead. Like we were eating road. Like some of the lads in the rally just had never driven before, and they just got their license before going to the rally. So it was the most amount of fun. So like, just there's literally them building the roads, right? And
but I think in our case, like having a tiny bit more power is having all more power. Like Joe, having off-road tires, which we kept, like we put on the off-road tires when we were waiting to cross the border into Mongolia. We had the tweaked engine, we had raised suspension, so like those few small changes made a huge difference when we were driving in the desert then.
So yeah, I'll just play this clip. So this we were just talking about this a minute ago, this micro with some they were from the UK, I think. They're
oh, that's the Yaris that the airbags went off in.
Their Yaris, their airbags went off over a bump, and if you've ever seen a airbag go off, they were shook. So then we were literally just driving towards the capital city, Ulaanbaatar or something. I think that's how you say it. I hope that's so. Like, just driving. The week before as well, there'd been massive floods that year apparently, and they'd washed away loads of the dirt roads. So some of the roads that were there before weren't even there anymore. So we just literally had to and they were like, "Oh yeah, we've no idea if those roads are still there." So You just have to fucking and the amount of dust coming into the car was unbelievable. So just driving through, just literally racing, which was obviously the whole point of it. Some of the most fun was picking a road that you thought was the better one, and oftentimes finding out that it was way worse, and just seeing everyone get ahead of you, or the opposite, which was more fun. So you'd be like, no, this is faster. So you like generally, no one had any maps or anything. There was no maps, like, because there was no road, so it was just head east essentially. Like, don't find like go in the direction of the capital city. Because when you got to the capital city, you went straight up to Russia.
Yeah.
So here's me. This is part of the Gobi Desert. Just doing a bit of. Is that you, Fitz? Oh, it is.
A bit of hurling.
Doing a bit of hurling. So I can't believe we managed to bring a slitter all the way.
Yeah, like those few days of driving in Mongolia were definitely the highlight of the trip. Just being able
One
to,
of the many.
yeah, just being able to open up a car completely and be racing against 5 or 6 other really shit cars, was unbelievably good crack.
Just some more pictures here again. So if it's more, like, they're just huge open areas, random houses. There was this field of boulders as well, which was odd. There's the bear puppy with his mother, probably for killing bears or wolves or eagles.
Well, the wolves is the thing with the Mongolians, that there's like kind of rambling packs of wolves, and that's why they used to keep eagles, because they'd hunt wolves with eagles, and then that would kind of deter the wolves from coming in. There's also there's fields and fields. So every morning, the eagles, they're golden eagles, so they're around 4 foot high when they're standing on the ground. So they're huge lumps of birds. And what would happen basically is they'd go and they'd nest in the mountains, like those ridges you're seeing in the pictures. They'd nest there at night. And then in the mornings, because the air is so cold, they wouldn't be able to fly. So they come down and they kind of sun themselves in the warm air, down on the like grassland pastures. And then as the air increases, they'll kind of start flying up again, and they'll basically use the thermals as the air is heating to get up higher and higher, and then start kind of cruising for the rest of the day. So how the race concludes is you drive to the capital city of Mongolia, which is Ulaanbaatar. Then you take a 90-degree left turn. You head for the Russian border, and then a few hundred kilometers directly north of the capital city of Mongolia, there's a Russian city called Ulan-Ude. And for some tax reasons and for some kind of general logistical reasons, the finish line of the rally is in that Russian city. So you get around just less than 30% of the cars that start, it will make it to Ulan-Ude. There's like a little archway that you drive through that's like, you finished the race now, everyone gets their pictures there. And then the people who've done the rally together, everyone's on a Facebook page, and basically everybody goes to this Irish bar, and you get locked for a night. I think if we had had more time, we probably would have stayed there for a day or two just to chill out a small bit more. And then what happened was that Tuesday morning we woke up, we got a shower, we packed up some of our gear, and then due to the time constraints, so the same way Gurf was under pressure at the start of the rally, so we had to miss a few days, at the very, very end of the rally, and I mean by like 3 days, he just had to get back for work. So
this began
1 p.m. on
the real race. This began the real rally, the actual, like, I had to book I had to get back, and the only flights that would get me back for work on Monday were flights from St. Petersburg to London to Cork, and we had to get them from Tuesday to Saturday. But the length of the journey was the length of Africa, right? So we had to get that by Saturday morning, just to put that in perspective. So we had to drive. Russia was fucking amazing. So I think there's some screenshots of some of the distance here. So we put into Google Maps, like, you didn't actually get Google Maps, but it put in like, oh, you can't see the bottom of that.
So it's from Ulan-Ude to St. Petersburg.
It was something like, fucking hell, look at the hair. Jesus Christ.
So it's 3 days and 6 hours. It's 6,500 kilometers. So that's
For a migrant that had seen better days.
yeah. And what we basically did was one person drove, one person navigated, and one person slept. And then we alternated that. So you did 2 hour shifts, and the car basically didn't stop except to put fuel in it, to check the oil and the water, and to change drivers from Tuesday at 1 p.m. in the afternoon all the way through until Saturday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. We pulled into St. Petersburg. We had made a booking for this really fucking weird gnome themed hostel, so like a garden gnome. So obviously Garth fit right in there because he could just walk in through the doors without having to crouch down. So we slept there. Garth's flight was 11 a.m. I think, if I remember right. So we got 3 hours sleep. Woke up again at around 8:30, 9 o'clock. We dropped Garth to the airport.
I'm sorry now, right? We've just skipped the most harrowing part of my entire life. I'm sorry now. I'm sorry. You just totally glossed over when I thought I was going to get murdered. Like, so we were driving along, coming up to, in the middle of Russia somewhere, coming up to a roundabout, right? And so there's obviously broken white lines and then a solid white line to stop you crossing over the road in front of a roundabout. And driving, I pulled into a petrol station. I barely drove over the solid white line. Went in, got our snacks, came back out, right? And just get into his car, and these two policemen with AK-47s and like they had pistols, and they were like standing there, and they just waved me over like this, you know. And they walked over to the car, and I was like, fuck. I was like, fuck. We were all like, fuck, what the fuck, you know? Because we'd bribe load of officials at border crossings and random places and whatever, you know. But we never actually. Luckily enough, many people do get pulled over with police, but we didn't. And so your man pulls us over, and we have this thing, it's called like an international driver's license. So basically it's just your license to say you have a license in Ireland, and it's written in a load of different languages, and one of the first ones is Russian, and it's in like acrylic. And I pulled that out. So you never give them your passport or your driver's license, because they won't give it back to you, because they know you'll need it, so you'll have to pay more money to get it back off them. So this thing costs us like a tenner, so I gave him this thing, and he's like, oh, bear in mind now, these are two like absolute cowboys. Both of them have several gold teeth. He's like, no, Ruski. And I was like, it is Russian. It says Russian Federation at the top or whatever. And he's like, no, Ruski. And obviously at this stage, pig ignorant to this kind of stuff. So I was like, it's been on for like 10 minutes. I was like, no, it is Russian. Look, it's Russian there. And then eventually he just stopped talking for a second. And then there's this big red brick building, like just old Soviet building. Like it looks like it's abandoned. And he backs me like this and tells me to come over. Just me, like, and I genuinely thought now, and I'm not joking you, and I'm not being no bravado here, I was like, they're going to beat the shit out of me. I was like, oh, this is what's going to happen. I was like, they're going to beat the shit out of me. And I was like, obviously I can't fight back because then they'll just kill me, so I'm just going to have to get the shit kicked out of me. And I was like, right. Obviously I couldn't run away or anything because they might shoot me, so I was just like, I'm going to get near murdered here. So I'm walking into the building with them. Turns out it's their police station. Still didn't mean I wasn't going to get the shit kicked out of me, but it turns out it was actually their police station. And then a few minutes later, Todd is like gathering all our bits and stuff, you know, all our documents. And he comes up to the car, or he comes up to us, you know, and your man is like, it's going to be, he's like, it's like €1,000 fine or something, and we're going to take the car off you. And at this stage, we were so sick of this shit, we just started laughing. We're like, no, you're not taking that, because we knew what was happening. Like, they're looking for a bribe, you know, that's all anyone's looking for. And then he was like, I'm going to have to write you. He's doing this all on Google Translate now, by the way. So he's like playing it on his phone and it's reading it out in this woman's voice. And he's like, okay, I'm going to have to give you a ticket. So he sits me down and he starts writing, and he's like, what's my name and stuff, you know? And I'm like, Owen Murphy or whatever, give me my address. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, obviously this is not going to affect me. Like, I'm not going to get this speeding ticket or whatever, you know? And then he's just trying to waste our time. Like, he's writing really slowly or whatever. And then Todd goes, oh, can we speed this up, you know? He's got a flight to catch. And your man is like, puts down the pen and sits like this with his fingers steepled, and he's like, okay. And then Todd is like, can we pay the fine now? And your man is like, yeah, you can pay the fine now. And then I run out to the car and grab a box of fags from Fitz, and I come back in with a box of fags and we gave him a €20 note. At first I was trying to give him a tenner, but he saw it at 20 and he was like, oh, so little, you know. And we're suddenly he's English, like. And then we gave him €20 and a box of fags, and then on
and
our
they're
merry
happy
way,
out then, like waving.
their man is
goodbye,
laughing like he's big fat fuck over a friend with gold teeth is just laughing in the corner, like. And then we made it back. St. Petersburg, the most tired I've ever been in my life.
Yeah, we were wretched at that point. You're beyond any kind of normal feelings. Like that morning we dropped you to the airport, we were 100%. We were like, oh, we'll just keep our booking in the hotel. We're gonna go back, sleep in the room for the rest of the day, and then head off again Sunday. And then you're just like, you're so jacked up, and your cortisol levels are through the roof. And we're just like, fuck it, we'll make it to Europe. And we crossed the border into Estonia, I think, that night. Or was it Latvia? We crossed the border anyway, got to a city, ate our body weight in burgers and fast food, slept with chicken nuggets for breakfast the next morning. And I remember sending pictures of the chicken nuggets to Gerf, being like, we get chicken nuggets finally. And then we made it home that Tuesday evening. So we made it basically.
It's the first thing I got. I remember sending it to them.
Oh, you bastard. That's the Centra in Inishannon, is it?
Oh, I don't remember.
But anyway,
no, it was a local.
So it was Tuesday afternoon until Tuesday evening, just a week later. We ended up doing the France to the UK ferry, and then the UK to Ireland, just purely because those ferries to the UK run so regularly. Like there was one every hour a lot of the time. So we just decided that would be faster and a bit easier. So we drove across the UK in a few hours, slept in the ferry terminal, and I remember waking up in the ferry terminal the next morning, that Tuesday morning, being like, holy shit, it's all over. Like they pulled their car into the shed there to search it, and they were just like, we had these waterproof buckets that we had kept some stuff in, so like we'd keep like clothes and stuff in them. And your one just like asked me to open one of the buckets, and she was just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like there was just dust everywhere. There's like pot noodles that have broken and sprayed across the back of the car. There's everything smells bad. Everything is covered in 5 different types of sand. So they just kind of waved us on again.
My only problem with the rally was it wasn't half long enough.
Yeah, and the fact that you can't go and do it every 6 months.
The only thing, like, you can never do it again. Like, I would love to, but you can never, because you can't repeat the same. Like, you just can't. Like, it's just not something you should do. Is try to look for the same thing again. There's other adventures in mind, obviously, in the future, and hopefully we can drive to Tokyo next year and stuff like that. So
that's the next.
But
I would say next big one.
If you're on the fence about if you've ever thought about doing Mongolia Rally, I don't even know if you can do it next year now, because I know the first time ever they had a limited number of tickets and they sold out. I think they've sold out, but if you're on the fence about ever doing anything like this, or especially it's in this particular case, we can give you, like, I would say do this sooner rather than later. If you're in any way on the fence, if you think you'd like to do it, just go do it, because I make it happen. I'd say it cost us about 10 grand all told, did it?
I think it was just 13, just coming up to 13,000
between the three of us. Like, so for
between the three of us, and we had sponsors as well.
The most fun you'll ever have,
and we raised like €5,000 for charity, which is kind of an afterthought, because you should really be doing big things like that for charity. But we did it because we wanted to do it, and the charitable donation was a nice add-on after that.
Yeah, I'd say, like, if you were in any way on the fence, I would just make it happen. Find you know you have 2 friends. You've at least 2 friends.
Yeah, and I would definitely say 3 is the number. Like four is too many. 4 is too many in the way of, like, for making decisions. Like, I think probably my last point on this would be, one of the weird kind of rules that we brought in was there's certain times when a decision just needs to be made. There's either not enough information, or we don't know the validity of the information to make the decision kind of rationally, and someone just needs to say, oh, we're going to go left at this crossroads instead of right, or we're going to stay here for a night, or we're going to move on for another 100 miles and we'll drive until 2 o'clock in the morning. And how those decisions were made in the absence of good information was you just had one person every day was the decision maker. So it would be like Gerf day 1, me day 2, Todd day 3, and it would just alternate through those. And those decisions come up, like in the latter stages, those decisions come up on an almost daily basis. And I would really, really recommend something like that.
I just recommend doing the rally. Like, just go do it. Like,
absolutely.
I would just. You definitely have two people you know who are dumb enough to do it with you. Like, you might not think people in your inner circle are dumb enough, but you definitely know two people.
Yeah. Find a cousin or something.
Yeah, family members would be that, but friends would be the best. But like, you definitely know. I guarantee you, unless you're an absolute loser, you know.
Probably likely.
Yeah, it's possible. You know two people who will do this with you, and I would say do it sooner rather than later, because the more like the more Mongolia builds its roads, you know, and
the smaller the world gets.
Yeah, like the less corrupt places are, and the better the car you'll get, the later on you'll be, you know, the less fun it is. Like, most of the fun is the hatchetness and the absolute mayhem and the, you know, potential danger, and, you know, the everything. Like, you know, the safer it is, the less fun it is, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're just gone over an hour and a half, which is good. A good weighty podcast. Like, the reason we kind of want to do something like this is obviously for our own sanity. It's good to like chat through things like this as well, but I think every so often just have a complete pivot. If you hate it, just let us know. And if you guys like this kind of stuff, like if you're watching this on YouTube, pop it below in the comments. We really are trying to figure out what kind of content you engage with the most and enjoy the most. If it's a podcast, if you could DM us whether you like it or not like it, or even on the comments on SoundCloud. But just any kind of reaching out for us at the moment is the most valuable thing we could possibly want.
Yeah, definitely. Like, we'll make whatever. Like, and obviously we had other ideas for today, like Fitz is saying, but this was one we'd promised to make a while ago, and people asked for it. Yeah. So it's definitely worth it.
So thanks for listening, / watching. See you all again next Thursday.